But you see them walking down, picking up the sidewalk, acting like they can whip everybody. Sure, they can whip somebody who looks just like them, because that's permitted. Permitted by whom? The white supremacists. They don't care. Kill everybody in the neighborhood. So what? There's another black neighborhood gone. There's another one down the street, ready to go. What's the big deal? You better be careful about whose face you get into when you get carried away with what you can do to other black people. And what's pitiful about it is most of us know that. Very few of us don't know that. We know whose face to get into. And we know just about how much backing we have. Black person in handcuffs. All kinds of tattoos. All kinds of long record for being able to whip everybody since 9th grade. Standing there in handcuffs, in an orange jumpsuit, in his best hairdo, saying, "Yes, Your Honor." Why don't you use the kind of language toward Your Honor that you use with the people that you encounter right there in your neighborhood? The one that you say that you're a master over. The one that you can terrorize. All the females flocking to you and halfway scared of you. Knock them around all over the place. Call them all kind of names. Why don't you call Your Honor that same name? Snatch him from behind the bench. No. See, we're great show people. Greatest show people on earth. 3 9mm, one in your sock, one in your waistband, one in your side pocket. Ready to take on the entire world in a movie. In a homemade video. Or passing a bus stop full of black people fixing to go to work. Or you can terrorize them. Why don't you take on the champ? Which usually is just 1 or 2 white supremacists who just come and say, "Now, I think you better behave because you're disturbing my peace. Now, if you don't think I can handle you, try me." And I haven't been on this planet forever, but I've never seen a situation on a large scale, or never heard of one on a large scale, of any significance throughout the history of the black male, because that's who I'm talking about, who didn't chicken out in a moment of real crisis. So I don't want to hear about that all-powerful black male, because I've seen our record, particularly in the last, I'll say, just in this area of the world, 60 years. Now, we've had a few who did things the way that they ought to be done. They protested in the street. They carried signs. They talked about non-justice. Martin Luther King, people like that.
They would have met it with violence. It was the only device open to you, wasn't it?
Well, I'll put it another way, that morally, I was led to nonviolence because I felt that it was the best moral way to deal with the problem. We were seeking to establish a just society. And it was my feeling then, and it is my feeling now, that violence is certainly much more socially destructive, and it creates many more social problems than it solves. So I was led to nonviolence for deep moral reasons. Now, there is no doubt about the fact that in our struggle in Montgomery and all over the United States for that matter, nonviolence is also practically sound. It would just be impractical for the Negro to turn to violence. He has neither the instruments nor the techniques of violence. We are about 10 or 11% of the total population of the nation, and I would say we're about 1/10 of the firepower. So it would just be totally impractical and unwise and unrealistic for the Negro to think of violence. Well, I saw this in the beginning in Montgomery, but this wasn't the basic reason that I turned to nonviolence and that I believed in it as a philosophy. I turned to it because I felt that it was the morally excellent way to deal with the problem of racial injustice in our country.
Annie Lou Hamer, as a black female, backing up black males who got out there and tried to do something that made sense.
We are sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Rather than just terrorize the neighbors. And that's doing what we're supposed to do from the weak position that we have. Only time we show all this bravery is when we are mistreating other victims of racism, for the most part. Some exceptions. Nelson Mandela, exception.
I stand here before you not as a prophet, but as a humble servant of you, the people.
Malcolm X, exception.
The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the Constitution of the United States, and the Bill of Rights are the principles in which we believe, and that these documents, if put into practice, represent the essence of mankind's hopes and good intentions, desirous that all Afro-American people and organizations should henceforth unite so that the welfare and well-being of our people will be assured. We are resolved to reinforce the common bond of purpose between our people by submerging all of our differences and establishing non-sectarian constructive programs for human rights.
A substantial list, but well-spaced. Well-spaced. All those black males in between, usually the ones who are doing hard time, if you look at what they're charged with, most of it is mistreating, whether they're guilty or not, but most of it is for mistreating other prisoners of war, the race war. People that look like themselves, can't stand themselves and want to kill everything that looks like them. And laugh about it. And call it an accomplishment. Now I harp on this because this is one thing that should be real passé. As they say in the hip-hop culture, I think they call it whack. That's really whack. I think that's what they call it. Makes no sense at all and has been embraced in every generation. Didn't just start. As far back as I can remember. Black male carrying the Saturday night razor. I'm going to cut me somebody before the night's over. Oh yeah, who are you going to cut? Who are you going to cut, Jimmy? Who are you going to cut, Mac? Well, I'm going over to the dance hall. Who's in the dance hall, Mac? I'm going to cut me somebody who breaks bad over at the dance hall. Who is it that's going to break bad in the dance hall, Mac? Somebody that looks like me. Somebody I probably went to school with before I dropped out. And they dropped out. So we meet up 18 years later. And we slash each other to death in the alley. And that's supposed to be a big deal and the purpose for being on the planet. Now, there are millions of black people who think just like that. And they are not all just in this area of the world. They are south of here, in places like Brazil. They look forward to that kind of foolishness. It's an old black tradition while we're talking about black history. That's a huge part of black culture. It needs to stop, and it needs to stop as of tonight. We need to do some thinking and just say enough of that. Been there, done that. Forget it. No more gang tattoos. I mean, who are we fooling? Who can we really whip? A very limited number of people. And certainly nobody who is smarter and more powerful than we are, particularly somebody who is really an army. A system of white supremacy. You know anything about taking that on? No, nothing, zero. Better start tap dancing.